In the previous video, we covered recommended operating systems. The only 3 operating systems I would feel safe using for anonymous content are Cubes, Unix, and Tails. These 3 operating systems either route all internet traffic through the Tor network by default, as is the case with Unix and Tails, or can be configured to only use the Tor network for all internet traffic, as is the case with Cubes. In this video, we will discuss what devices you should or shouldn't use to maintain your anonymity. The first thing to say about devices is that smartphones are not safe to be used for much of anything covered in this video series. Smartphones are the ultimate surveillance device and a serious threat to your privacy and anonymity. Android and iPhones are constantly communicating back to either Google or Apple, sending tremendous amounts of telemetry. It is scarcely an exaggeration to say that literally everything you do on your phone is reported and stored on a server somewhere. This includes not only what you're doing, but where you are physically located while you're doing it. Google Android phones report your location to within an accuracy of about 6 feet, back to Google servers at least once per minute, and likely even more frequently than that. This enables what are known as geofence warrants. This is how the FBI was able to arrest or question everyone that was at the January 6th Capitol riot. This even includes people that had their phones in airplane mode the entire time. Their phones kept track of their location history, and as soon as airplane mode was disabled and the phone gained an internet connection, it uploaded all the location history that it was unable to report in real time. It is a common misconception that phones only use GPS or cell towers to determine your location. They do in fact use these methods, but they also use Wi-Fi routers and Bluetooth beacons to triangulate your location as well. So even if you put your phone in airplane mode and remove the SIM card, your phone will still be able to locate its position and report this to Google or Apple. On a stock phone, there is really no way of escaping this. For instance, if you disable location tracking in the settings on a Google Android phone, this only limits access to location for third-party apps. Google still knows where you are and reports this back to home base. On top of all the ways these phones can spy on you, these phones are directly tied to your real identity through your Google or Apple account, which typically includes a credit card, unless you take extraordinary steps to prevent this. But even this is kind of pointless, because anyone with your location history can easily find where you live, and thus make an educated guess at your identity. My basic recommendation is to keep these phones as far away from your anonymous content as possible. This is especially true if you're recording your voice for content. But even if you aren't, many phone apps, websites, and even television commercials utilize something known as ultrasonic cross-device tracking. The website will play a sound through your speakers well outside of human hearing range, which will then be picked up by your phone's microphone. This is a well-established and known threat to potentially de-anonymize Tor users, and is one of the reasons that any media in the safer security settings are click to play. If you need to use an internet connection away from home, leave the phone at home. I would avoid turning your phone off completely when working on your anonymous content, because this can help establish a pattern that could conceivably be correlated. It's worth mentioning that it is possible to somewhat mitigate these risks with smartphones. You can eliminate the threat of Google tracking your location and activity by using an Android custom ROM, such as Graphene OS. Graphene OS is probably the best option out of various custom ROMs to achieve a de-Googled Android phone. Unfortunately, there is no way to install a different operating system on an iPhone. You can also take steps to completely block the microphone on an iPhone or Android using one of these mic lock devices. Obviously, you can also block the cameras using stickers. And finally, you can block all radio signals completely using a Faraday bag. And as a final word on using phones, it should go without saying that you should not research anything related to your content on your phone. If you install Graphene OS on an Android smartphone, it may be somewhat safe to browse the internet using Tor browser for Android. But anything beyond that is not recommended, unless you really know what you're doing. I would also strongly recommend that you dispense with any smart devices, such as Google Home, Amazon Echo, and so on. These devices are always listening, and we have no idea what happens, or what might happen, with that potentially collected audio. Another potential threat is smart TVs. In addition to any data collected by the TV manufacturer, we know from WikiLeaks that a certain 3-letter agency is able to hack some of these TVs and eavesdrop on any conversations within earshot of the built-in microphone. In general, it's best practice to not keep anything in your home with either a camera or microphone that's connected to the internet, if at all possible. Another frequently overlooked threat to your anonymity is your car. Unless your vehicle was manufactured prior to about 2014, it most likely has a cellular data connection that, among other things, constantly reports your vehicle's location to the manufacturer, which is in turn likely sold to various data brokers. If this is a concern for you, and you don't want to buy a 10-plus-year-old car, there are some vehicles, such as some recent model year Toyotas, in which the cellular connection can be disabled by removing a fuse. This is a topic that firmly falls into the do-your-own-research category. But I felt in a video about devices, the viewer should at least be aware of this. For your primary device that will be used to produce content, it should be a new laptop, ideally purchased anonymously, or as anonymously as feasibly possible, with either cash or Monero. This laptop should only be used for your anonymous content identity and nothing else. Your real name or any personal details should not even be typed into this computer, ever. One possible exception is if you use cubes and have a separate virtual machine for your own personal accounts, but I would still not recommend it. If you are considering using Cubes OS at any point in the future, this will restrict your choice of laptops. I've left a link in the description to a list of officially supported laptops, as well as an unofficial list, maintained by the Cubes community. When choosing between AMD and Intel processors for your dedicated laptop, we're presented with a bit of a paradox. Both AMD and Intel have management subsystems that have full access to the network and memory. These are known as the Intel Management Engine and AMD Platform Security Processor. Although both systems have been speculated to be some sort of three-letter agency backdoor, the consensus seems to be that AMD Platform Security Processor is much less likely to be a backdoor as opposed to Intel Management Engine. In addition, AMD Platform Security Processor can be disabled in the BIOS settings. So, all else being equal, it would make more sense to choose an AMD processor as opposed to an Intel. The problem is, however, that an anti-tampering protection feature included in Cubes, known as the anti-evil made, only works with Intel processors. If you intend to use Cubes and you think it is highly unlikely that someone would attempt to compromise your device with physical access, it may make sense to go the AMD route, but you may need to do some research to determine which AMD laptops are Cubes compatible. On the other hand, several manufacturers, including Purism and System76, advertise that Intel Management Engine is partially disabled on their laptops, making it much less likely that any potential backdoor functionality remains intact. Unfortunately, Intel processors cannot function without some portions of Intel Management Engine, so it cannot be disabled entirely. I personally use a Purism laptop running Cubes that I am quite happy with. Although Purism laptops are relatively underpowered in terms of the processor for a similarly priced laptop from other manufacturers, they have several benefits that I think are worth considering. Aside from having Intel Management Engine partially disabled, they come with physical kill switches. One switch enables or disables Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and the other enables or disables the camera and microphone. In addition, Purism is the only manufacturer I'm aware of that accepts Monero for payment. If you buy the computer from them with Monero and ship to a friend's address or some other address not connected to you personally, there will be no record anywhere that you own that computer. So if you intend on using Cubes, I would recommend getting a Purism Librem 14 laptop. If you intend on using Unix and are certain that you will not use Cubes, this opens up your choices considerably. However, I would still recommend using Linux as your host OS when using Unix. So I would advise doing some research to make sure your laptop does not have any issues installing or using Linux. If you cannot afford to buy a new laptop, your best option is to use Tails. Tails itself, along with the Tor browser, is reasonably good at preventing any unique hardware identifiers, such as your Wi-Fi MAC address, from leaking. Keep in mind this is not necessarily the case with Unix or Cubes, which is why getting a new, clean laptop is necessary. If your computer has ever been attached to a Windows account or Apple ID, these hardware identifiers are likely known and logged by Windows or Apple. So that's all I have to say about devices for now. In the next video, we will discuss account creation.